this is a book that makes you feel extremely smart when you finish reading it.
Welcome back to another episode of The Book Isn't Necessarily Better, a library podcast. I'm your host, Michaela.
And I'm Roxanne.
And we have a special guest today.
We do. We have one of my very good friends, John Fischer. We flew him out we spared no expense to fly John out from Minnesota to Michaela's delight to being outnumbered now.
I love Minnesotans.
John's my very good friend. So good, in fact, he officiated my husband and I's wedding. He is also a playground designer, so he knows a little thing about parks, you could say.
Exactly.
And he also happens to be the world's foremost Jurassic Park subject expert. John, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. First-time caller, long-time listener. Big fan of the program.
Thank you. Thank you. So, John, as the guest, and we are discussing Jurassic Park today by Michael Crichton, could you go ahead and give us a synopsis of the book, a brief one?
Sure. So, Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton is basically a story about a wealthy industrialist who, through a combination of loose ethics and unchecked greed, decides to create a theme park on a private island full of genetically cloned and modified dinosaurs as a tourist attraction. And over the course of the novel, through a series of kind of unpredicted turns of events, everything goes awry, and it very quickly sort of descends into to chaos, which will become an operative word later.
Okay, great. Wow, that was so much more succinct than I ever do on this show. John, let's get into it. When I asked if you would maybe want to be on the podcast when you're out here visiting, you immediately said Jurassic Park. So
Exactly.
Why do you love Jurassic Park?
There's a level of nostalgia with me, as with a lot of people that are kind of millennial age, I think. The movie came out when I want to say I was 6 or 7 years old. For me, I really extra got into both the book and the movie when I first read the book in third grade, Home with Chickenpox. And I would say about half the subject matter kind of went over my head at the time, but I think this is my 5th time rereading it just a few days ago. When I was little, the giant dinosaurs and the spectacle of the dinosaurs, but then as I got older, just the sort of parable nature of the whole book and movie, the storyline is just something I really like.
So you came for the dinosaurs, you stayed for the narrative.
Exactly, yep. The philosophy is what hooked me.
Michaela, did you say that you did a little background research on Michael Crichton?
I did.
And what year did this book come out?
This book came out in 1990. He was in the process of writing it for years and years from different perspectives, and then was working with Steven Spielberg to create what would become ER later, and accidentally told Steven Spielberg about this dinosaur thing he was writing. And Steven was like, I will pay you $1.5 million for the rights to that book. So before he had even published it in 1990, in 1989, landed a lucrative $1.5 million deal, plus a percentage of the gross.
Sure.
And Steven Spielberg paid him another $500,000 to adapt the screenplay.
Wow.
Yeah, which is insane. Later, after that movie had come out, he also had said, I'd really love to make another one if there was another book. So Michael Crichton wrote the second book because Steven Spielberg he basically already knew Steven Spielberg was going to make the second movie before he wrote the second book.
Okay.
So anyway, Michael Crichton, born John Michael Crichton in 1942. He died a couple years ago in 2008 of lymphoma. He also wrote under other pseudonyms, John Lange, Jeffrey Hudson, and Michael Douglas, ironically. Yeah, he wrote 26 novels, plus a lot of them published since he died. That's actually how I found out he died. We had a novel here a couple years ago, had his name on it, and someone else's name. I was like, I didn't know he wrote with other people, and found out that he was dead and someone else had finished a draft that he had. He was also a director and a writer for film for many, many years. He wrote and directed Westworld.
The HBO?
Like the original movie.
Oh, from the 70s.
With Yul Brynner in it.
Yeah. Which was the first film ever to use 2-dimensional computer-generated imagery.
Wow.
Yeah. And he created ER.
I had no idea.
Yeah, me either. He was a notable global warming skeptic as well. did a lot of speeches and things about how global warming either isn't real or we shouldn't really worry about it.
Huh.
Kind of
Curious.
Yeah. Talked to Congress about it a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting guy.
Yeah.
Also one of People's 50 Most Beautiful People in 1992. Don't know if I agree with that.
He's fine.
Yeah. He was also like 6'9". Like that guy was...
Whoa.
Yeah, he was enormous.
Do you think that's why he liked dinosaurs?
Yeah, there's a biographic element here.
He could relate. Yeah. It's like I can speak to you on my own level.
He really likes the Brachiosaurus.
There's an ankylosaur named after him, actually, that they discovered a while later.
What kind of dinosaur is that?
An ankylosaur is, it's one of the four-legged ones. It's got this, not really spikes on the back, but it's got like actual spikes.
Oh, okay.
And a clubbed tail. It's actually my favorite kind of dinosaur.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Michaela, do you have a favorite dinosaur?
I'll think about it. I don't know. I've never met one.
I think I like pterodactyls.
Mm-hmm.
They're cool.
But I'm going to think about it.
Yeah.
There's an extremely horrifying pterodactyl attack in the book that was later brought into Jurassic Park 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's just get into it.
Mhm.
The most famous adaptation is the Steven Spielberg Jurassic Park movie,
Mhm.
which came out in 1993. It was the summer blockbuster, and it is the 17th highest grossing movie ever.
And I think we were talking a little bit earlier, Roxanne and I, about the impact on a cultural level beyond monetary that the merchandising for Jurassic Park had. I mean, I had a T-Rex with battle damage where if you hit a button, a part of its ribs would fly off.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they made all manner of toys and clothes and games and everything. So
Fun fact about that, in the movie, the gift shop has real merchandise, including a book about the making of Jurassic Park, the movie.
It's very meta. Yeah.
Yes. Well, let's get into the movie.
Yeah.
So, John, it's right off the bat, it starts differently than the book, right?
Yeah. So the book kind of is a little bit of a slower build towards kind of the catastrophic, spectacular events of the movie. So the book actually starts out with a rich couple vacationing in Costa Rica, and their 4-year-old daughter is attacked by a lizard they can't identify. It's later determined it's a Procompsognathus, which are these little sort of chicken-sized dinosaurs. So the scene that the movie starts with is very different. It's a dinosaur of some sort being loaded on a rainy jungle night into a gate in a park, and then that's the famous scene where the guy is screaming for everyone to shoot her because the dinosaur is pulling someone through the cage, and it's very terrifying and gruesome. Then they kind of converge a little bit where you start to learn about your characters, learn about the backstory of the park a little bit. You meet our two intrepid paleontologists, Alan and Ellie, and they start on a dig site, both in the book and the movie, and then it kind of starts progressing from there.
You were telling me a little bit about how different John Hammond is in the book from the movie.
Yes. So John Hammond is like I said, the wealthy industrialist that's kind of bankrolling and spearheading Jurassic Park.
And what's his famous line that people always say?
We have a T-Rex.
And he is played by?
He's played by Richard Attenborough.
I found out that Attenborough specifically came out of retirement from acting. Mm-hmm. He said because Spielberg has the charm of the devil.
Which is funny because Spielberg really saw himself in the character of Hammond. So he made him much, much, much nicer in the movie than he is in the book.
Correct. Hammond in the book is a very frightening character. He has that sort of doddering old man charm, and he kind of uses that as a tool to sort of disarm people. And throughout the course of the book, you get more and more insight into just how delusional and self-aggrandizing this guy is. As the park is falling apart around him and people are dying left and right, he's going down a mental checklist of who he would hire instead of the people he did because they clearly failed him. And he starts describing over the radio to someone the 2 other islands he'd already bought, saying, we're going to do better the next time. Yeah.
He ends up being eaten. No,
he ends up being eaten. It's actually really disturbing. He gets scared by the sound of a T-Rex and stumbles down a hill, breaking his ankle. And then in the attempt to scramble back up the hill is mauled by the same tiny dinosaurs from the beginning of the book and taken apart. And then you come to find out his grandchildren were the ones who triggered a remote Tyrannosaurus Rex sound effect board. So it's a much more kind of a gruesome ending for John Hammond.
So it wasn't even that he heard the real T-Rex.
No, it's that he just got spooked by this sound and went running into the woods.
Probably how I would die.
Exactly. Yep.
By getting spooked.
Yep, exactly.
Some poetic justice right there.
The grandchildren are quite different.
Yes, that's also true. So the grandchildren are a little bit younger in the book, Tim and Lex. And so these are John Hammond's grandchildren. And in the book, they're kind of vastly less capable than they're shown to be in the movie. We were talking about how specifically Lex is constantly whining for ice cream and cheeseburgers. And they also do a much deeper job in the book of showing the intense trauma that these kids go through, especially during the famous T-Rex attack scene that we've all seen in the movie where it's trying to bite through the sunroof of the car. The little girl, Lex, when they meet her afterwards, is completely catatonic and can't talk.
That seems more realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, in the movie, it was not supposed to happen that the plexiglass on the top of the car falls in on them. It was an accident, so the animatronic bumped it. Yeah. And so the screams from the children in that scene are absolutely real in the terror. So they kept their real screams in.
Oh, man.
Horrifying. Yeah. Richard Attenborough in this he's Santa Claus.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
He's from Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's still Santa Claus in this movie.
Sweet but misguided, I'd say.
Yeah. He wants to make something fun and exciting for the world. And there's none of like that ruthless businessman from the book.
And a great difference just between two lines between the book and the movie. There's the scene where the main characters are all sitting and having lunch together, discussing kind of the ethics of the park. And at one point, the Gennaro character, who in the movie is this sort of slippery lawyer, says, we can charge $5,000 a day, $10,000 a day, and people will pay it. And then Attenborough says, no, I don't want this park to just be for the super rich. We can have a coupon day or something like that. Which is kind of this cute thing. And then in the book, he says, well, I want all the children of the world to enjoy these dinosaurs, or at least the rich ones. And then they sort of elbow each other and laugh together. Yeah.
Villain laugh.
Yeah.
So it really does go from he is Santa Claus in the movie.
Yeah.
To he's
a nefarious businessman who seems to also show very little concern for the lives of his grandchildren.
Well, in the movie too, he just sort of sends them off with strangers.
Yeah, it's a little weird. And again, the core theme of both of the subjects here both of the medium are hubris, right? And no one exemplifies it more than perhaps the Hammond character. He intrinsically believes that he has engineered this flawless system that can't go wrong. And the Ian Malcolm character, played famously by Jeff Goldblum, is sort of standing in contrast to that. He's saying, you can't make something this complicated do what you want to do.
Life finds a way.
Life finds a way.
That's a great segue. Let's talk about Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Yes, definitely one of the most interesting parts of the book, and kind of serves as almost a framing device for the whole novel. So as you go through the book chapter by chapter, there are increasingly complicated drawings of fractals that appear in the different sections. Oh. So fractals, of course, are like a mathematical model for geometry that get more and more complicated and finite as you spiral further and further down, right? And
no, not right. I got a C in geometry. I'm not kidding. Because I didn't know how to use my calculator.
Understood.
I'm serious.
So in the book, Dr. Ian Malcolm is kind of this hotshot rock star mathematician who subscribes to a field of study called chaos theory.
And doesn't he say I'm a chaotician? Chaotician, or doesn't he?
And basically he was hired on by Hammond earlier on to kind of be an advisor or a consultant for the park because he's really good at using computers to simulate the outcomes of really complicated, unpredictable systems. And you learn right away in the novel that basically from day one, Ian Malcolm has been telling John Hammond, don't do this. You can't control this. It's too powerful and complicated. And John Hammond essentially just waves him off.
So did Hammond hire Malcolm?
Yes.
Why did he hire him if he then just waves him off?
Yeah, so he hired him. Part of the whole conflict of why people are coming to the island in the first place, and it's explained a little bit better in the book, but it's in the movie as well, is that the people financing the park are starting to have misgivings because they're hearing about these accidents with workers getting clawed up. They hear about the little girl. So they start to they've sort of left him alone for a long time, and they start to kind of get cold feet on their investments. So they insist that he hires a team of consultants to come down to the park and make sure it's operating smoothly. Among them are the paleontologists, the lawyer, and the mathematician.
He has one of my favorite lines, which I love. Life finds a way. I also love Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. I quote, "Hold on to your butts" all the time.
Hold on to your butts.
That's from Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
I missed that.
Yeah, it's universally usable.
Yeah, with a cigarette in your mouth.
Yeah, just chain smoking the whole movie.
Yep.
It's pretty great.
Yep. And that character in the book is expanded on a little bit more.
What is his name?
His name's John Arnold in the book. So he's sort of the systems controller for Jurassic Park. And you quickly learn, again, going back to that hubris theme earlier, that the amount of overlap in the knowledge of how the park runs is woefully insignificant. Basically, as soon as any one person is gone, everyone kind of collectively goes, we don't know how to turn this back on.
Michael Crichton deals with that a lot in a lot of his different novels. The failure of supposedly fail-safe systems.
Mm-hmm.
Has he ever written a Titanic novel? About Titanic?
Oh, no. not to my knowledge.
Oh, not like Titanic,
yeah,
big.
we both took that like an adjective.
I know, I saw it in your eyes. No, about Titanic because they're supposed to be unsinkable.
Right. That's true. That would seem to be in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, he's a little more sciencey about it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a book that makes you feel extremely smart when you finished reading it. There's all sorts of charts and graphs and illustrations of computer menus and great jargon getting thrown around.
So speaking of technology, there's some fun, now outdated technology in the movie. For instance, when Nedry is trying to talk to the guys in the dock, and it's supposed to be a live security cam. If you look on the screen, it is very, very plainly a QuickTime video, and you can even see the play button at the bottom and the progress bar going across.
Not to mention, as you said, he introduced us to the GIF back in 1993 when they attempt to hack back into his computer system to regain control of the park. You're greeted by Wayne Knight's face photoshopped onto Elvis Presley's body saying, you didn't say the magic word.
Just giving fodder for trolls everywhere.
Exactly.
Which again is ironic because Jeff Goldblum, the sexy Jeff Goldblum meme is from this movie is everywhere.
Exactly.
And they Photoshop him onto everybody.
Yep.
It's a very memeable piece of intellectual property.
I do want to talk about another adaptation that has been made of Jurassic Park that I was fortunate enough to witness in 2015. I used to write for a blog called Fun Vancouver, and I'd get free tickets to go to things. And so if you'll indulge me, I'll just read the paragraph that I wrote called Jurassic Parody, the Musical! I'll just read the quick paragraph. Of the non-human leads, the chorus of Clever Girls, which are literally man-eating glamour girl tap-dancing raptors, and the diva T-Rex were the real stars of the show, belting out their intentions to eat all the children. I left the movie theater wondering how I'll be able to make a Halloween costume rival to their sparkly dino leotards. I was also pleased to note that if there was such a thing as a Bechdel test for Lady Dinos, then this production would pass with flying colors.
Very good.
Let's talk about more of the casting. So did you know that Harrison Ford almost played Alan Grant?
Oh, wow.
Sean Connery almost played John Hammond.
That would be great. Yeah.
Robin Wright turned down the role of Ellie Sattler, and Jim Carrey auditioned to be Ian Malcolm.
That would have been very different.
It could have been really interesting. I think of Jim Carrey in the movie Number 23, where he's kind of going insane and becoming obsessive. That could be fitting.
It could. I just love Jeff Goldblum so much in this movie.
Completely iconic. And he really nails the characterization of the Ian Malcolm character from the book as well. One crucial difference I should mention regarding Ian Malcolm is he does not survive in the book. And that when Michael Crichton later on wrote The Lost World as the sequel, he retconned that ending so that Jeff Goldblum could appear in the movie sequel, which was, of course, a tie-in.
What does retcon mean?
Retroactive continuity. So that's when you basically, it's kind of famously used in comic books where a writer will basically put in an asterisk and say, refer to the events of issue blah, blah, blah. But then it will modify what actually happened to make the past book fit with the current book. So in the beginning of The Lost World, they say that Dr. Ian Malcolm, the reports of his death were greatly exaggerated. And because in the book, he gets bit in the leg by the T-Rex and thrown like in the movie, but he quickly goes septic and falls into like a kind of a half lucid state throughout the entire book where he's rambling about the nature of chaos theory.
Whoa.
And then they napalm the island.
And then they napalm the island. The Costa Rican government napalms the island and then holds Grant Sadler and Muldoon hostage at their embassy at the end of the book is how it ends.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot more grim at the end.
It's dark.
Yeah.
They also eat a baby in the book.
Yep.
One of the dinosaurs? Or
there's a string of children maulings in Costa Rica. And so one of the core plots of the book that is completely dropped for the movie is that early on someone through a telescope spots dinosaurs sneaking onto a cargo ship, some velociraptors. So
clever
girls, if you will. And so throughout the entire plot, Grant and the kids are the ones who know about it. However, like in the movie, they're separated from everyone else. So they're trying to make it back across the park, not only to survive, but to get to a working phone to call the boat before it makes landfall over in Costa Rica and the dinosaurs run amok.
So many movie plots before the mid-90s had to do with getting to a phone in time.
Yes, it's true.
Before cell phones.
It's true. Yep, exactly.
Very true.
Or so many plots that could have just been solved by a simple text.
Yep.
Like, hey, I'm here.
Yep.
Or I had to leave. Yeah. I had to leave, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I still love you or whatever.
Dinosaurs BRB.
Dinosaurs be biting. Let's talk about sort of the gamekeeper of the park.
Yeah, Muldoon. So in the book, his backstory is given a little bit more that he grew up in Kenya and became a safari guide and then later a big game warden. So the way they describe him is kind of this great white hunter character who has taken down the largest, most violent animals on the planet before. And even he is still kind of bamboozled by the dinosaurs at different points. And he also uses much more aggressive weaponry in the book. They talk about how he has a store of rocket launchers. It's all manner of wild stuff.
It's like walking around with grenades all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also a very heavy drinker in the book. He's constantly taking pulls off of a hip flask. So he's a much more kind of intimidating character.
Yeah, I feel like in the movie, you want to be with him because he'll probably save you.
Yeah.
Whereas the book version, I feel like I would go with someone else.
He's also kind of joining the chorus of Dr. Ian Malcolm in the book, basically constantly telling John Hammond, you need to destroy these animals. They're too dangerous.
So a question I had when we were watching it, John, was why did they create the predators instead of just keeping it at the Brachiosaurus?
Right. And that's where it kind of dovetails into the greed part of this, and the hubris again is in the book they describe Dr. Henry Wu, who's played in the movie by B.D. Wong,
by the legendary American treasure B.D. Wong.
That's true. That's an accurate way to put it. And he's basically this geneticist who just got his PhD and is really eager to do some cutting edge work. And John Hammond says, I'll get you as much money as you need and never tell you no.
And he's sort of young, right?
It's I think they said he's 28 in the novel. Yeah, it's very naive. And so the reason they have these apex predator dinosaurs is basically twofold. A, as Wu is starting to replicate the dinosaur DNA, since they're pulling it out of things like mosquitoes and ticks that they find in the amber, they don't know what dinosaur they're getting. And they don't really have any basis of comparison. So as they start growing these embryos, they talk about how the earliest iterations, they basically had to wait for them to mature and then try to classify them. And then once they realized they had some velociraptors, John Hammond saw dollar signs because he thought people from all over the world will want to see these things. They're so terrifying and ferocious. So again, there's that hubris of thinking that you can control them and turn them into kind of a Chuck E. Cheese performance act.
Right. Yeah. Well, zoo.
Yeah, a zoo. Yeah, it'd be like a zoo. Only with animals that we've never attempted to contain before.
That hubris is also reflected in another fail-safe system that they have in the book, it's only programmed to count how many animals they already know they have.
Yep.
So, like, they have whatever, like 33 velociraptors.
Yeah.
The computer stops counting at 33 because it's like, there would never be any more than 33 velociraptors.
Yep.
This feels like a Y2K problem.
Yes, it very much is a
not?
Y2K kind of problem. And then they talk about how one of their supposed redundancies is the animal count and then a big network of motion sensors. And it isn't until they realize that everything's really going wrong that they start comparing the results of the two, because both of them were saying everything was fine independently. And then suddenly the motion sensor count of dinosaurs starts going up and up and up and up and up.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus they move around underground.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
How?
There's like a human-made tunnel that isn't really being used for anything. And
They got into the tunnel?
They got into the tunnel.
And there's a massive raptor nest.
Yeah.
With like guards, like guard raptors, and then the matron raptor. And at one point,
they have a whole social system.
Like a house raptor.
Exactly, yeah. And Muldoon,
a den mother.
Muldoon, Grant, and Sadler actually go down there with belts of nerve gas grenades. It's sort of a weird Vietnam War era. They have to clamber into a tiny tunnel. It's extremely strange.
This leads me to a question I have. As listeners of the podcast may know, I won't speak for Michaela, but I am an indoor kid. Heavy reader.
that goes for me as well.
Yeah. How long would you last?
At Jurassic Park?
Yes.
Oh, I'd be dead day one.
Yeah, I think it's a question of minutes.
I'd be one of the first.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'd be the John Hammond being afraid of like a sound. Like, he's after me, and then just expire of fright.
Yep, that seems about right for me too.
What about you?
Yeah, I'd be pretty dead. But I wouldn't want to go in the first place.
Yeah.
That's, for a lot of these situations, I wouldn't put myself in this situation in the first place. I don't want to go to a dinosaur park.
Oh, I absolutely want to go to a dinosaur park.
I want to go to Disneyland.
Nope. Dinosaur park all the way.
Or just Hawaii. I want to go Hawaii.
This is Hawaii with dinosaurs.
It's true.
I just want Hawaii. That's fine. I feel like we're leaving out a character. Oh, well, let's talk about Wayne Knight's character.
Yes, I was just about to mention that. Dennis Nedry. Yeah. He's kind of the voice of corporate corruption in the book. So to explain his character a little bit, he's a disgruntled programmer who created all of the computer coding that runs Jurassic Park. So he's this ostensibly very brilliant man, but he complains constantly that he's not being paid enough by John Hammond, and John Hammond kind of pushes back on him. And he eventually winds up selling his services to a rival genetics firm. And so they, at the beginning of the book and the novel, agree to pay him, I think it's $3 million total for stealing viable embryos. And then it's shown really humorously in the movie that he's given a can of Barbasol shaving cream that can store dinosaur eggs inside it. And so really, in a way, he's kind of the antagonist who triggers all of the disasters in the park by trying to steal these dinosaur eggs.
And then how does he trigger the disasters?
So he embeds hidden coding in the programming of Jurassic Park that he can sort of execute to create blind spots in the security so he can sneak in and grab the eggs and then leave without really being noticed. But the problem is, due to a lack of sort of fail-safes and forethought, it sort of disables the entire park. It takes off the phones, the electric fences. I mean, like, absolutely everything shuts down because it was an unprecedented event.
Does he make it out of the park?
No, he sure doesn't.
In the book or the movie?
Neither. And it's shown in the movie by Wayne Knight kind of fumbling around in a rain slicker.
And Wayne Knight is also famous for playing Newman on Seinfeld.
Yep. And in the book, and in both the book and the movie, he's attacked by Dilophosaurs, which are this venom-spitting dinosaur. And in the book, he is very graphically taken apart by dinosaurs while still alive. So the book doesn't hold back on the descriptions of some of the dinosaur maulings. It's pretty rough.
I read that James Cameron actually wanted to direct this originally and then said, it's probably a really good thing that I didn't. Stephen A. made a much better movie than I would have, and B, cut out a lot of the graphic violence that I would have put in there, and I didn't. I'm glad that I didn't do it because I didn't want to horrify a generation of children who love dinosaurs.
And that does bring me to an interesting thought I had rewatching it recently, thinking, how was I not more scared watching this as a little kid? Because it deeply creeps me out as an adult. I don't know if maybe we're just...
Oh, I was
scary.
petrified.
As a kid?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it as a kid. I watched it over and over again, and maybe I just didn't think about the scary parts that much.
Well, you only actually see 15 minutes of dinosaurs screen time in the entire
The whole
movie.
thing.
Oh, wow.
Which does speak to it being a Spielberg movie because, like, for instance, in Jaws.
Right, Jaws, yep.
You only see the shark like for 6 minutes in the whole movie.
Same with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The aliens are sort of alluded to early on, and then you really don't see them until the last 6 or 7 minutes of the movie before the credits.
Yeah, if you think about it with the dinosaurs, you see a lot of rustling leaves.
Yep.
You hear them.
Or the famous ripples in the glass of water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how they pulled that off?
It's well, first of all, he really wanted that to happen, Steven Spielberg, and went to his special effects team and was like, I need this to happen. Can you guys do that? And they were all like, oh yeah, Steven, we totally know how to do that. They didn't know how to do that. It took someone, I think, playing a guitar to realize that they could use strings. So they strung underneath that dashboard, and there was a guy down there just like plucking strings. Clink. Yeah.
But it's probably the most iconic shot of the movie in a lot of ways, just that little water cup trembling.
It's great.
It's such a memeable movie.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I'm thinking about Lex eating Jell-O and looking scared.
Yep. Me saying I spared no expense all the time. And that goes back. That's a really important line throughout the book, and he says it all the time in the movie as well. That he spared no expense. It's basically the idea that if you throw enough money at a problem, you can contain it. That goes back to kind of that hubris theme we were talking about.
Where did Hammond supposedly make his money?
They talk at the beginning of the book. There's kind of a foreword about the origins of genetic technology in America and how they started making money. And Hammond founded a company called InGen. Actually, at the beginning of the book, he doesn't really have that much money to his name, but he's managed to rope in a bunch of investors from all over the world, particularly Japan, with this idea that he has this exotic animal park. And that's also one of the pretenses under which he hires all his experts. He never uses the word dinosaurs with anyone. That's one of the other kind of weird things in the book is that only a really small handful of people that are physically on the island actually really know what he's doing.
He calls it like a zoological park all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or that they're working with reptiles.
Oh, so it might be a gator park.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about the sequels.
Mm-hmm.
So have you...
Or let's not.
Or let's not. Michaela was telling me about one adaptation you were watching that you particularly hated.
Oh my goodness. So this isn't really one of the sequels. Are you talking about the Cretaceous camp thing?
Yes, or I guess an adaptation.
Okay, it's an adaptation. It came out last year. It's on Netflix right now.
Oh, it's that new.
It's that new. It's called Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous.
Okay.
It's a CGI animated series that kind of jumps off of Jurassic Park, and it opens with this super hokey animation. My husband was literally like, was this movie made in 1985? It's awful looking, and as it was going, I was like, why is this so first person? Like, you can see, like, your hands in front of you as it goes. Turns out it's a kid playing a video game, and then he dies. The Tyrannosaurus Rex eats him. He turns around, and the animation's completely different. And his brother's like, why are you still playing that game? And he goes, because I need to win the all-expense-paid trip to Jurassic Park. Like, and that's where it lost me.
And how many minutes into the movie was that?
Maybe 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was not long, but it's a whole series.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking certainly about the Universal Studios ride we watched. It's been turned into rides. It's been turned into video games, comic books. I mean, just, of course, toys.
They actually made the ride at the same time they were making the movie.
Oh, wow.
The ride is fantastic. It's at Universal Studios in Florida for sure. I'm not sure if it's also in the California one. It's amazing. You can just go on YouTube and watch the ride through. It's worth it. It's great.
And if we're talking about adaptations, one thing I did want to mention, when I was researching this, there was actually a book that came out just a few years before Jurassic Park called Carnosaur, written by John Brosnan. And there was actually some controversy where Brosnan accused Michael Crichton of plagiarism because Carnosaur, which came out in 1984, is a movie about a kooky British lord, I believe, who basically uses his money to genetically clone dinosaurs for a preserve on his grounds. And then they break out into the English countryside and start massacring villages and stuff. And then the army I think there's a fight scene between a tank and a triceratops at one point.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah, and that was later adopted into a Roger Corman movie in the 90s, shortly after the Jurassic Park movie came out. So it was sort of looked down on a little bit, and it was also a pretty bad movie. But there are imitators out there.
Michael Crichton has been sued several times for sort of like copyright infringement or like, and he wins every time. He like walks away and he's like, yep, I'm just a winner. He literally says that like every interview. He's never lost like a lawsuit, basically.
Clever girl.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the raptors? That scene in the kitchen, for instance.
Oh, man.
Is there anything you can tell us about?
Yeah, so that scene happens almost exactly the same way in the book. I think Spielberg really latched onto that scene. I mean, it's almost a beat for beat match to what happens in the book, as I recall, down to the two kids slipping on the ice trying to close the freezer door on the raptor and put a pin through it. It's terrifying, and it's such a masterful mix of puppetry mixed with CGI, mixed with great practical effects. I mean, the shot of the velociraptor peeking through the door, and then it breathes and its nose fogs up the glass for a second.
So scary.
And you see the doorknob start to turn. It's really creepy.
This movie holds up incredibly well.
Yes.
And I think it's because of like the practical effects.
Yeah.
The animatronics in it are pretty good.
Oh yeah, they're amazing. The CGI is starting to show its age a little bit, but it really gets the job done, and the sound design is great. And of course, we can't forget the score by John Williams.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Tremendous.
That swell when they first come to the island, when they first see the brachiosauri out in the field, it's like so awe-inspiring and just makes it so magical, which is why the rest of the movie is maybe even more horrifying, because at the beginning you're really swept up in like, oh my God, this is happening.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It starts in such a dreamlike kind of way. Yeah, like this fantasy.
And ends in a nightmare.
Exactly. all thanks to Mr. DNA.
So, besides Hammond, who are the main people responsible for the chaos?
So it largely comes down to the actions of Dennis Nedry, Wayne Knight's character in the movie. The fact that he effectively sabotages the park pretty thoroughly. And then it's really just the sort of unfolding levels of hubris in the way the park was designed, assuming nothing would ever fail. So a huge chunk of the book is basically devoted to them trying to figure out how they're going to restore power to the island, how they're going to restore controls to the system, because they never accounted for even the possibility that it might happen.
How many book sequels are there?
I believe 2. I need to verify that. I know Lost World for sure. And I think Jurassic Park 3 was novelized, but we should maybe double check that.
Yeah. I don't think by him.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Yeah.
The Lost World is based on, well, at least the title and some of the identifying features of it is based on a novel by Arthur Conan Doyle, also called The Lost World, where they go to like an Amazonian basin where prehistoric animals still survive. So way to go, Sherlock Holmes guy.
Yep. And that theme is kind of carried over. It's been a while since I've seen The Lost World, but isn't it essentially that there are dinosaurs still alive on the island, and Ian Malcolm becomes kind of the central character as the person who's asked to go back to the island.
Yes. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, and it's after he'd been sort of flogged in the media and hushed up by InGen, John Hammond's company. He was going on late night talk shows talking about how he was mauled by a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and most people think he's insane. Yeah.
What becomes of the paleontologists in the book?
They, so at the end of the book, they're all finally taken safely back to Costa Rica. And the sort of last paragraph of the book is Dr. Grant talking to a consulate in the Puerto Rican government. And the consulate basically saying, well, we'll let the kids go back home. That shouldn't cause any problems. And then Dr. Grant says, great, well, when are we heading home? And the last sentence of the novel, I believe, is, oh, none of us are going anywhere. Meaning,
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, meaning that the Puerto Rican government, or the Costa Rican government, still has questions for them.
I see.
Yeah, because they had no clue what was actually happening on this island.
I believe, though, that the entire original cast, except Richard Attenborough, who's dead now, is coming back for the movie that comes out next year.
Oh, okay.
I believe. I'll have to look into it. But Jurassic World Dominion comes out in 2022, and they've got everybody back.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, including the doctors.
All right.
Laura Dern, the Dernisons.
A dinosaur?
I don't like Laura Dern.
I know.
But
it's unfortunate.
You know what? I'm coming around like a little bit. She's
Because she's great. There's nothing to not like about her.
Yeah.
Well,
there's nothing to not like about her.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the Jurassic World movies?
I actually haven't. No, it's been on my to-do list for a long time, and I've got a flight coming up, so I think that might be what I'm watching.
Yeah, no, scratch them off.
Okay, not worth it.
No, I remember, I've only watched them the one time when they came out.
Sure.
And I remember the 2018, the Jurassic World, whichever one that was. My husband wanted to walk out. It's the only time he's ever wanted to walk out of a movie.
Okay.
He's a huge movie buff. And he was like, we should just go. He was very upset. But they both have really good premises that just don't get realized very well. The first one, dinosaurs have been around in the park. Everyone's seen them already. And so to like cash grab, they genetically modify existing dinosaurs to create new dinosaurs, including an Indominus Rex, which has no social skills whatsoever, is huge like a T-Rex and smart like a velociraptor.
Why?
Exactly.
And can't it also change color too? Like it can camouflage itself?
Chameleon-like.
Yeah.
So basically just the apex predator.
Right.
It's terrifying, which is great, but like, I don't care. By the end of the movie, I'm like, this could have been so good. Like, but I just don't care. And the last one, they're like selling off dinosaurs on the black market, which again could be so interesting and have such good social commentary, and it just doesn't.
Wait, so we could have a Tiger King, but with dinosaurs?
Ooh.
Oh my God.
There we go.
Yes.
Well, there was actually a canceled sequel to Jurassic Park 3 that was in the works for a while, where they were going to feature anthropomorphic velociraptor descendants, which immediately makes me think of the Super Mario Brothers movie, where Dennis Hopper turns into a T-Rex at the end.
Yeah.
In the premise of these movie sequels, it's that the park actually opens to the public?
In the newer ones, yeah. In Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, it's more that they're going back to initially Isla Nublar, and then you find out that there was a smaller island that was a secondary genetics facility that has even more dinosaurs running amok on it. And that's the big difference that they had to retcon, is that like you said, at the end of the first book, the Costa Rican government just glasses the entire island with napalm. So if theoretically pretty much every dinosaur is dead except for maybe the few weird unaccounted ones they talked about at the beginning of the novel.
Oh.
Yeah. It's kind of a bleak way to end the book.
Yeah. I think overall the book is much less desolate and hopeless than the movie, at least the first movie, because Jurassic Park, I leave that and it's got
yeah,
and they're like flying out and there's birds flying alongside the plane and the island's all beautiful underneath them, and I'm like, this is fine.
Yeah, like they made it. They did it.
Yeah, hooray.
They're all gonna go to Chili's.
Go Team Human.
You get a queso sampler.
Yep, exactly.
Celebrate.
Yep. And then the book is everything's on fire and you're trapped by the government.
Yeah, everything's terrible.
So basically 2020.
2020 the book.
Was a book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap up, I just have one more question for you, John. If you were a dinosaur, what sound would you make?
I don't claim to be a paleontologist, but I think that my favorite dinosaur would be real grunty. So it'd be kind of a like a cow-like kind of noise.
Nice.
See, I would be maybe, I think, like one of the like kind of fast ones with some sort of like webbed wing thing.
Sure, and a kind of
And
chirping.
I'd be like,
Yep, exactly. Makes sense.
And I will not participate in this because
no tomfoolery for Michaela.
I have no imagination.
But you have much more dignity than we do.
Yes. Thanks. Thank you.
John, I cannot thank you enough for coming out. We did not fly him out at our own expense. He's coming out to visit us. But thank you so much for doing the podcast with us today. Any last thoughts about Jurassic Park?
Please pick up the book and read it. It's got a lot of great little wrinkles that are not in the movie. And while you're doing it, rewatch the movie because the movie is still excellent almost 30 years later.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. This has been the podcast. The book isn't necessarily better. We are your hosts, Roxanne
And Michaela.
and
John.
all right. We'll talk to you next time. You can look it up. And then
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's the magic of
It's,
podcasts.
John Arnold. I looked at a lot of memes this morning.